It's a once-in-a-generation investment in America, unlike anything we've seen or done since we built the interstate highway system and the space race decades ago.
This afternoon, President Biden announced a $2 trillion plan to improve America's infrastructure. And the president's plan for the future involves reconnecting a New Orleans neighborhood.
So the outline of this American Jobs Plan specifically mentions the Claiborne Expressway and how that highway divided the Treme community, something we've talked about here before. So one idea to reconnect the neighborhood is to just take it down. Paul Dudley tells us more.
Bernard Sanders remembers what Claiborne in Treme looked like before the expressway towered above. Not only was it a commercial hub for black-owned businesses, but it was also a cultural hub.
Everything came off of Claiborne. It was like the main artery for the African-American community.
In the 1960s, it was decided the expressway would run over Treme, dividing and destroying what used to be. Sanders runs the Claiborne Avenue History Project.
There were no discussions about it or anything like that. And they just showed up and started tearing down oak trees around 1966.
Decades later, it seems the White House is listening. The outline of the American Jobs Plan specifically mentions how the Claiborne Expressway divided the community. The president's plan also includes $20 billion for a new program that will reconnect neighborhoods cut off by investments. The plan is light on specifics, so we asked Robert Collins, professor of urban studies at Dillard, about the best way to reconnect the neighborhood.
From an urban planning standpoint, the most important thing would actually be to take down the bridge, to take down the elevated highway.
The traffic over the Claiborne corridor is already heavy, so Collins says you'd need a plan to divert cars, possibly using 610 and other auxiliary streets. But it would take a lot of time and a lot of money, too.
And that's always the sticking point, because it's important for people to keep in mind when you talk about federal investment, you're not talking about millions of dollars, you're talking about tens of millions of dollars.
Since the 1970s, ideas to remove certain off-ramps and even taking down the expressway have all failed. Sanders is holding on to hope. He says the neighborhood depends on it.
We would just hope, from the Claiborne Avenue History Project perspective, that something is significantly done to address all of the damage that has been done with this community.
Paul Dudley, Eyewitness News.
And if you do want to learn more about the Treme community and the drastic changes that community has undergone, from urban renewal to slum clearance and the building of the I-10 from those from the community, you can head over to our YouTube page and watch my series, Treme, Death of a Neighborhood, Survival of a Culture.